About 10 years ago, I played in a small group of mutual friends every other week. This was not my first campaign, so I had a good idea of the mechanics and character building, etc. On the other hand, one of the other members of the group, let's call her M, was a new player. M was new to TTRPGs, but very excited to try them. Fast forward about 3 months, M now has a character that is interested in another member of the party, played by W. M decides to have her character pursue W's character without clearing it up with him. All is well, or so we thought. It turns out that although both M and W were married to different people outside the party, they were spending copious amounts of time planning out character romances with one another out of game, so much that they began to fall for one another. M confesses to W her out-of-character feelings, and W reciprocates. They both decide to leave their spouses. Thankfully, they're both childless. While the game continued without any more drama, this is still a reminder I have told other groups about the dangers of character bleed. This is like every incel's dream, that in-game romance leads to out-of-game romance. It certainly can happen. Don't get me wrong. We just saw it happen right here. But does it happen often? No. Is it something you should bank on? No. And is it always healthy? Well, that's not exactly a question I can answer. For those who didn't see my previous post, I have 2 simple rules when it comes to character creation. 1. The character has to make sense in the world conceptually. 2. The character has to see themselves as a member of the party and a participant in the adventure. Obligatory mobile apologies. Disclaimer, this story happened almost 10 years ago. I'll try to retell it as faithfully as possible, but my memory is not a steel trap, and things blur as the years go by. Also, it can easily be said that I bear a decent amount of blame for how this turned out, and I can own that. A bit of a backstory, our regular DM has just graduated from college and accepted a job halfway across the country. I volunteered to step into his shoes and become our new DM, and let me just say that those were big shoes to fill. He was known for crafting absolutely brilliant homebrew worlds, complete with riveting storylines and thrilling combat. Maybe it's nostalgia speaking, but there were a few things that he couldn't do well. However, we as a group did have one regular complaint. He could be limiting when it came to character creation. We could only choose from a relatively small selection of races and classes, and were usually steered towards a good alignment. He was big into heroic archetypes. Not the end of the world though, we still had a lot of fun, but some of us were itching to play something a little bit different. So when I took over in my infinite wisdom, please read that last line with as much sarcasm as possible, I decided to lift all restrictions on race, class, and alignment. Most players went for some flavor of chaotic neutral, except for one, who we will refer to as Rogue. Rogue texts me one day and asks if I mind if he plays a chaotic evil character. Me, being an immature 20-year-old who enjoys playing evil characters in games like Oblivion and Fallout, as well as being an inexperienced DM who's never had to deal with the headaches that murder hobos inevitably bring, said that sounded like a fantastic idea. Rogue starts off his antics almost immediately in the first session by executing a bandit that the rest of the party had captured and was going to set free once they interrogated him. This sets off a big argument between the characters, in character, out of character. They were all, smiles and laughs, and almost breaks up the party from the get-go. To my relief, Rogue has his character back down and apologize. The party agrees to drop the issue. This did not stop the Rogue from murder hoboing, however. He just decided to get smarter about how he went about it. He would come up with very elaborate plans to off NPCs who had slighted him. To the player's credit, these plans were generally well thought out and allowed him to avoid detection from both his party as well as the authorities. To make these plans work, though, he would regularly buy, loot, steal any item he found useful. He regularly had an inventory full of utility items like potions and scrolls that all had unique effects. In the beginning, I admit, we were all entertained by Rogue's antics. The other players even egged him on at times, out of character of course. None of us had experienced a murder hobo before, so this was all new and an interesting experience for all of us. The novelty, however, quickly wore off. As the sessions wore on and months go by, we would begin to get annoyed that Rogue was taking up more and more time with his murder plots. In hindsight, I should have done something to manage the situation, but I was still very inexperienced at the time and not very confident in what I could do. Then finally, we get to the night of The incident. After a successful mission, the party visits a local inn to rest and celebrate. Rogue invites the party back to his room so that they can have some drinks in private and plot over their next course of action. He pours everyone a glass of wine. It's only after each character had taken a drink that he reveals that he had laced the wine with a powerful sleeping draught. He then tells me that his character waits until everyone is asleep and then proceeds to empty jars of oil across the room. He then walks out of the room and throws a torch down on the floor before he shuts the door. Once the door is shut, he pulls out a scroll of arcane lock and magically locks the door shut, leaving the rest of player characters to die in a horrible blaze. After a few moments of shocked silence, everyone at the table starts shouting simultaneously, saying they wouldn't have drank the wine, asking to roll insight, asking to make a save, anything and everything that could potentially save their characters. It took me longer than I'm proud of, but eventually I gathered my wits. I asked Rogue what prompted his character to commit this act, since it seemed out of character for him to suddenly turn against his friends. He responded they didn't technically need a reason, as his character was chaotic evil. But since I asked, he pulled out a journal that he wrote from the perspective of his character. It was full of perceived slights from every member of the party, leading back all the way to the argument in the very first session. It became clear that he had been planning this for months, since the beginning of the campaign. I was stunned, to say the least. This was a campaign that I spent a considerable amount of time on, and it had just gone up in flames. Quite literally. Awkwardly, I called an end to the session so I could figure out how to handle the situation appropriately. Everybody left grumbling except for Rogue, who walked out with a satisfied smirk. The next morning, I called my old DM for advice. After tearing me a new one for not accounting to the time zone difference between us, he coached me through how to handle the rolls and saves that would be needed for Rogue's plan to actually go into effect. But he told me the better idea was to just retcon the whole session, which is what I ended up doing. Rogue was not happy, ended up leaving the campaign, but realistically, the campaign would have ended if I let him get his way, so no big loss there. And there you go. This story is a major reason why I make sure all my players now make characters that would willingly work together, and it goes without saying that they shouldn't drug and incinerate their party either. Looking back, I cringe at how I handled a lot of this, but I've learned a lot and improved over the years. Sucking at something is the first step towards being kinda good at something. TLDR, Rogue plots for months on end to kill his entire party. My dumbass almost lets it happen. I'm surprised that we don't talk about retcons more. It's not exactly a tabletop tavern tips worthy subject, but yeah, often the best option when you have a problem player who got out of hand and did something really bad at the table, the best and simplest option for everyone involved is just to retcon what happened. Unless the entire party are down to play out the consequences, reversing the decisions of the problem player is something within the DM's power, and here we see it used in a very appropriate fashion. Clearly the rest of the party did not like this. The only one who was upset was the Rogue, for obvious reasons. Also, yeah, this kind of evil character that just murders everybody for no particular reason because they're chaotic evil is a big reason why I just generally don't want to do evil characters. I also like heroic archetypes. There's nothing particularly good about that or bad about that, it's just the way I run the game. And evil campaigns can be really fun, but if you're gonna do one, you need a party that are going to work together unless you want an epic PvP scheming game, which could also be a good time. But anyway, point is, you need to figure out a way for everyone to have a good time. And I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that everyone getting murdered glass onion style is, probably not exactly what most would define as a good D&D experience. This happened the Thursday before Christmas, so I'm in between gaming campaigns, and a friend texts me asking if I'm available for a game at the local store on Thursday night, as they just had a lost player due to getting orders to move out of the state. I was free those nights. Nice thing about a 9-to-5 job is all nights are free, and so I said yes, and what does the party need? She said that they needed a 6th level rogue, so I whipped one up. I sent it to the DM and got it approved, with a few gifts from the DM of level-suitable magic items to help me slot right in. DM asks if I could come early to the game night so he could feel my character and playing style out. So Thursday night comes along and I get there early. DM and I get along as my RP style seems to fit his expectations and the current dynamic of the party. He starts the session as a one-on-one with me in a tavern, seeing what I do. Since my backstory was a scout for a local mercenary company, I was looking for a place to settle down and use as a home base when not adventuring, so a visit to the tavern was important. As a halfling, good food, good cider, good entertainment, and good company was important. Finding all of this at the local tavern, I was sitting at the bar and singing along with the bard and chatting with the bar staff. The rest of the party arrives and get to the game. Party is in the same town I'm in, and they start looking for the much-needed rogue for the adventure, and just so happen on the tavern I'm in. So here's where things go south. My friend was the face of the group and popped in first. The DM gives a description of me, and as soon as the words, "You see a halfling sitting at the bar," are spoken, friend says, "Oh, it's an edgelord," and turns right around and leaves the tavern, stopping the rest of the party from entering, saying, "No one in there who will suit us. Let's look in another tavern." DM asks what's going on. Friend says, "We don't need Edgy McEdge in our party." DM explains that my character wasn't being an edgelord and was in fact more the stereotypical halfling enjoying a night on the town, singing, drinking, eating, and having a good old time. Just a sec, I love how this guy's interpretation and point of view on halflings is, "Oh my god, it's so edgy," when I'm pretty sure everyone else just thinks of,
That was just a detour. A shortcut. A shortcut to what?
The mushrooms!
a little bit of a disconnect there. Friend says, "Oh," and looks at the rest of the party and says, "Let's head to another tavern and look for a rogue." Pretty much everyone looks at her with a "what the hell" look on their faces, and one of the party asks, "But didn't the DM say that she's not being edgy and is just being a chill halfling?" Friend says, "Yes, but that's player knowledge and not character knowledge. Based on my initial and mistaken first impression, I, my character, think that it's a dark and brooding halfling rogue, even though I, the player, know it's not." Looking at the DM, she smirks and says, "After all, I can't act on player knowledge, since that's metagaming." DM swears and asks to go talk to my friend privately. They go off and have a rather heated argument about metagaming. I look at one of the other players and they tell me that my friend has been called out several times about her metagaming and she wasn't happy about being called out on it. 10 minutes go by and I wander over to where they're having their argument and try to get their attention. The DM says, "Give me a minute please," while my friend snaps at me with, "Shut the hell up and go sit down, I'm busy." What kind of friend is this? I sit down and wait another 10 minutes and they're still at it. By now, the rest of the table has wandered off. One slipped out to go get McDonald's, one went to the bathroom, and two were looking at minis. At that point, I packed up and left. I didn't make a scene as no one noticed. I got home and my phone went off. I answered since it was my friend. Didn't get a word in edgewise from her ranting about how the party was screwed since my promised rogue was now AWOL. Funny, there was an available rogue, but eventually I just tuned out her rantings, set my phone to do not disturb, hung up and started binge watching Christmas specials. Haven't heard from her since. This is a wonderful showcase of what happens when Reddit and reality meet in the middle. Maybe this friend felt like her DM was really hurting her and her gameplay by calling her out on metagaming. Maybe he was being really mean about it, we don't know. But her response to that is to drag her buddy into this game and use them as a tool for some petty malicious compliance. Which, look, doesn't work. From the OP's perspective, they're ready to play, they've joined this game, and then all of a sudden they are thrust into an extremely awkward situation with the friend trying to do some kind of gotcha revenge on the DM. Which, yeah, might be fun for a petty revenge Reddit post, but real life, we're seeing here that it doesn't work out like that. From the perspective of everyone else, it just comes off as dickish. Sure, maybe we don't have the full picture and the DM was overreacting about the metagaming. That's possible. But at the same time, the friend, well, she's got her own problems. This story is from a long while back. I decided to run a game of D&D. I had played in many TTRPG games before in a number of systems, but had very little DM experience. I threw together a simple plot and rounded up 4 players. The plot starts with a paladin, who was an adoptive father to the 4 players. The game itself starts at his funeral, at the sorting of his will. The paladin has left an old trunk to his 4 sons. Inside, they find the broken pieces of a sword, the instructions to deliver the sword to a specific priest in a library from across the continent. It will be a very long journey through many places. Along the way, a cult will try to track and kill the party and steal the sword. This is because bound inside the sword is a powerful demon. Along the way, the party will have chances to try and fix the sword, partially free the demon, or just seal it away for study by top men. Each option comes with their own rewards and consequences. I had an ending ready for all 3 choices, everything was in order, everything was going well. A few towns into the journey, the party has encountered the evil cult enough times to start to recognize them. The party decides to infiltrate the cult to learn more about their intentions and why they want this sword. The party splits up in what is essentially an extended downtime session, where they each work with other cult members. The party loves the idea and spirits are high. Then one player learns the cult has a boat. It is fitted with special tools for demon-related activities, but to the casual observer, seems like a normal merchant's boat. The party remembers this and returns to the boat that night, hoping to sneak aboard and try to unmask the cult's leadership. A series of bad rolls later and the boat is on fire. The party learns that using gunpowder and fire magic to blow open a locked chest aboard a ship made out of wood and yet more gunpowder, well, that's not the brightest idea. They retreat from the scene of the crime with the lightly singed chest and return to the rest of the party. Not wanting to punish his less than bright idea, I put all the info I wanted him to get from the boat in the box he stole. Inside was some money, replacing the cool items he could have found. Rather than clues implicating a few nobles in town as high-ranking cult members, I put the noble's name on a deed for the ship. Everything should work out, and the party now has the name of someone in the cult's leadership to investigate. However, as soon as I mention there is a deed to the ship, and before I can list the names of the owners, the party rogue demands to erase the name and write himself as the owner of the boat. He proudly points at his ranks in forgery, and the rest of the party do not discourage him, but insist that all of their names get added, so he doesn't own the boat all on his own. He rolls a nat 20 before I speak, and the table explodes into cheering. Drinks are spilt, hands are clapped, the landlord is called. We are asked to play D&D quietly during the late hours. The party is jazzed by the idea of owning their own boat. When I remind them that the boat is a burnt husk sitting on the floor of the dock, this only makes them more excited. They all declare that they want to file an insurance claim on the boat. It has got to be worth hundreds of thousands of gold and has to be insured. No noble cultist would buy a cheap boat or leave an expensive boat uninsured. Good, now they have interest in who owns the boat with a demonic altar in it when money is involved. So, I don't want to just shut them down completely. And the final destination of the campaign is accessible by sea. Okay, this is fine. I am not giving them a boat's worth of gold because they would blow it all off on loot. So, I give them the boat. They need to hire a crew. Forgery does not grant them sailing abilities. They need to plot a course and come up with a basic schedule of what they want to do with their new boat before a crew will sail upon it. And so, I know what they might do next so I can, plan around it too. The next game session is entirely taken up by a board meeting of We Stole a Boat, LLC. They discuss what they can spend on a crew, what goods they can buy, then sell for profit to cover future boat voyages and crew retention. They discussed everything from hazards to crew equipment all the way down to tariffs, taxes, and marketing strategies. I spent the week before the session preparing for this. Still, I just spent the whole session rapidly Googling and trying to find decent-looking data to feed them while they planned how to use their new boat. The next 2 sessions are split between preparing the ship and further board meetings. They try to leverage every skill, feat, and spell to gain an edge in the market. They try to find what is popular at their destination. They hunt for merchants they can trick, bribe, coerce, steal from, all in the name of getting their goods as cheaply as possible to maximize profit. One player releases a cloud of noxious gas into a warehouse just to clear it so they can break in and steal a few crates of apples. I can't really complain. Everyone's having fun, and I'm doing my best to keep up with whatever obscure questions they have. What's the shelf life on raw fruit on a boat at sea? Can that be extended by mundane means? What about magical means? Can we forge the seal of a local trade guild to try and get around import tariffs? So I have the cult attack the ship at sea. The party emerges victorious, but they are irritated. They unanimously agree that they should seal the sword in a box with a bunch of rocks and toss it overboard. Even as I watch my entire story literally sink to the bottom of the ocean, I do my best to keep the game going. The cult shows up again at port. The party is once again irritated that they are being pursued, even though they no longer have the sword. They are likewise vocally upset that the bad guys did not immediately believe them when they said the sword was now at the bottom of the ocean. They sell their stuff, pay their crew, and happily count their money. They then plan the next expedition back home and start canvassing for rumors on what sells well this time of year. So at this point, the party just continues to sail around, fight off generic sea hazards, such as pirates, who are in no way interested in the missing sword, thank God, and sea monsters and the like. Everyone is relatively happy again until the magic user brings up that his skills are not nearly as useful in manipulating the market as the rest of the team. The rogue can steal and cheat, the fighter can intimidate, the cleric can ask a god for stock market tips, but he can't do anything but set stuff on fire. on a boat, made of wood, filled with gunpowder, out on sea. He leaves in the middle of yet another board meeting regarding how to use his magic to make goods appear broken or rotten for a discount, and suddenly, no one really wants to play with their toy boat anymore. The game dies, and everyone suggests that if I had been more flexible or better at engaging them in their pursuit of maritime profit, things would have gone better. I didn't really know how to feel about the game. I feel that I have improved as a GM over the years, but I often find myself thinking about this game and how I could have ran it better, or at least how I could have ran it differently. Though in our friend group, we now have a term for killing a D&D game by doing something random. We call it buying a boat. This is a classic problem that I've talked about quite a bit. It's the problem of wanting to play Curse of Strahd, but never going to Barovia. And that's the example I always give for a reason, because fundamentally, if you don't go to Barovia, you can't play Curse of Strahd. And similarly here, if the party ditch the quest, they can't play the quest. Yeah, the DM can completely reframe their campaign, and if this DM enjoyed the seafaring trade adventure, and the party enjoyed it as well, great, everyone's having fun. But here, we see a DM who clearly isn't having a good time. Their plot was thrown to the bottom of the ocean, and the players really don't seem to be taking into account that the DM also needs to be having fun. Look, if these players want their seafaring adventure, that's awesome, and I hope they find a DM who will run that for them, genuinely. I mean, hell, that DM might be me, because this actually sounds great, but this DM, the DM who wrote this story, they're clearly not the fit for these people. It's okay for two separate people to play two separate games. I think this needed to be discussed out of game, with both party and DM discussing on what direction they should take the campaign, and if the DM actually wants to participate in that direction. DM fun has to be remembered. I see way too often people saying the DMs are just referees or even enemies to be overcome, but they're not. They're part of this party too, and they should also be having fun. Danger, danger, danger. This lovely little tale happened over lockdown, online via D&D Discord server. Content warning, heavy discussion. I joined a D&D Discord server where people just chill, talk about D&D builds, and just chat. Very casual. About 6 of us would regularly pop into voice chat to meme around. We always had funny conversations with each other and got along very well. The 6 of us decided to do a D&D campaign together, a casual 5th edition Curse of Strahd game. Damn it, it's always Strahd. It's always Strahd. We agreed collectively that we can go meme around and go Monty Python in the campaign. Relevant characters include me, playing a Tempest Cleric, Storm Sorcerer. DM, chill dude, first time DMing, means well, and regrets not jumping in earlier. Scanlan, critical role, Ripoff. Player literally describes him as Scanlan Shorthalt, but a half-elf and hot, and boasts that he's Scanlan done right. Honestly, kind of a red flag, but since we're doing a Monty Python fun game and our artificer was a Tony Stark knockoff, it went under the radar. Paladin, the only female player in the group. Remember this piece of information for later, unfortunately. It is important. Artificer and fighter, they aren't the stars of the story, but here they are. This whole thing happened over session 0. We did some ground rules, expectations, explaining homebrews and all that jazz. Me, fighter, paladin, we all mutually agreed that was not something we were comfortable with, and the DM promised to not go into that territory. Remember this little piece of information, it is important for later. Near the end of session 0, we decided to do a little combat and some RP. We did an easy, save the village from goblins scenario to test out our builds and see if we wanted to change some things before we started the real campaign. All went well, the goblins got murdered and the villagers were saved, yay! They threw a party for us at the local tavern and we RP'd with our characters for a bit. Scanlan did the stereotypical bard thing and seduced a village girl. Nothing wrong yet. Even though it was supposed to fade to black, another thing we agreed on, Scanlan then asks the DM if he can... I'm fine. DM awkwardly laughs and agrees, asks Scanlan to do a constitution save. He clears and the village girl passes out in a bliss. A little awkward, but everyone was more or less okay since he didn't give any graphic details. But then Scanlan said this:
I bring her downstairs and leave the bitch on the table for others to use her.
There's an uncomfy pause, a very uncomfy pause, and Paladin politely tells him that since the village girl is unconscious, it would be bad if anybody used her. Scanlan argues that it wouldn't be bad because he left her nice and sensitive and she would enjoy it. And now we're all feeling crazy uncomfortable right now. Paladin again reiterates that the village girl is unconscious. It doesn't matter if her body likes it or not. Scanlan fires back that real doesn't feel good. The villager is probably going to feel so good it's not even. The back and forth argument turns ugly when Scanlan starts screaming abuse at Paladin. It ends when she audibly lets out a sob. DM finally gets off his ass and kicks Scanlan from the group call. Took you long enough, man. Come on. There is a very awkward silence as Paladin is sniffling and trying to get herself composed. I felt super guilty for not saying anything. I'm a very awkward person when confrontation happens, and I just tend to shut down, not to get too personal. DM breaks the silence and apologizes for not stepping up sooner because he was feeling shocked and didn't know how to react. The rest of us guys also apologize for not stepping in, citing that we also felt uncomfortable and awkward as the conversation went on and didn't know how to react. She said it was fine and that she wanted to hop off and decompress for a bit. We end the session right there. But don't worry, there is a happy ending. We all got together and each sent a page-long report against Scanlan. He was publicly shamed in the announcements of the Discord group and permabanned for all time. The server owners also encouraged everyone in the group to stick him onto their ban lists. Paladin stated that she wanted to play again because she still liked everyone and didn't want the game to end before it started just because of one asshole. We added a female warlock to the group and started the campaign. It ended recently and it was a very good 2-year campaign. One of the funniest I ever played. This one is just... Fuck. Thanks, actual Scanlan, played by actual Sam Riegel. I know I shot a stray one at the DM, but at the end of the day, the DM acknowledged their mistake. And on top of that, if we're all being honest with ourselves, conflict resolution is not something that most people have a proficiency in. For a lot of people, they assume like, hey, if it's really that terrible, that bad, it should be easy to get rid of them. But the shock of how bad some people can act can really cause people to just shut down, and that's what we see here. Now, I want to make this clear. I am not advocating for complacency. I understand why it happens, but that does not mean it's okay, and we see the DM and the whole group here acknowledge that. Furthermore, we see them take this issue to the mods so that this guy will trouble their Discord server no longer. Good stuff there. Alright, and that's going to be it for today's episode of RPG Horror Stories. If you guys enjoyed it, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of my content, then please check out Tavern Adjacent, our podcast where I go over D&D horror stories sent in by you guys, as well as some miscellaneous D&D stuff. And while you're there in the cards, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down into the comments down below. If you cannot think of a comment, leave the comment, not Scanlan, to let me know you made it to the end of the video. Like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.